Moved. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Nice. Check it off. Anyone have a conflict of interest?
No.
Well, you forgot the agenda.
What's that?
You forgot the approval of the agenda. You got excited about the pledge.
Oh, I did. I got really excited. All right, so consideration of agenda. Does everyone like it? Anyone have any comments, any changes needed? I liked it.
I don't have any.
Anyone want to make a motion?
Motion to approve the agendas presented.
Second.
Nice. All right, now conflict of interest.
All those in favor?
Oh, all those.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I got you. It's all good.
Thanks. Conflict of interest. Nobody?
I have none.
Okay, we're good. Approval of meeting minutes. Did everyone read the meeting minutes? Do you believe that we didn't do the Pledge of Allegiance last time? Apparently we didn't. Did you find anything else that you're like,
Way to go, guys.
I know.
You weren't here, Jason.
You would have kept us on task. Okay, nobody has anything? Look good?
I'd make the motion, we approve the minutes from May 9th.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Everyone good with that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Public comment and agenda items other than the public hearing. There's not much on there other than the public hearing. No, good? All right then. No public comments. Correspondence, I believe we had none.
None.
Unfinished business?
Nothing.
New business, public hearing, that's what we're all here for. Okay, amendment to chapter 20, section 20.06, dimensional variances. Gonna call that to order here. We hear from,
I'll give you just a brief background on it. So this was something the ZBA would like the Planning Commission to take up and to consider. These are the criteria that are used for a variance that they use frequently. And the criteria that currently exist kind of go back and forth. So sometimes you're voting yes when you say no. And so we tried to make the criteria so that when you vote yes, you're voting yes, that it meets that criteria. And no, when you're saying no, it doesn't meet that criteria, and instead of trying to figure out, what you're trying to say. So to clarify the language, it has similar criteria, even though it's worded differently. So the policy isn't changing too much. And they do come or are started from a recommendation from the Michigan Association of Planning. They have a guidebook during training. That's where we, pulled those from. So that's the brief intro to that. We did publish the notices in the paper it was May 25th in the Elk Rapids News for your 15 days.
check. Okay, we did have public comment on this.
Yes, from Janet. And you'll just have to speak kind of close to the microphone. It is on. You may not hear yourself, but YouTube will hear you.
Okay, I'll do my best. I'd like to comment on the dimensional variances provision. And I think the criteria that you have listed here are appropriate, and they should all be considered when examining a request for variance. I think they give a large picture, a bigger picture of the situation that's being presented, and that's why I think they're appropriate. However, I think that the requirement to meet all four criteria is unnecessary and unreasonable. I think there is certainly a reason for trying to bring as much of the township into compliance with the zoning ordinance as possible, as soon as possible, and to reduce or limit the number of variance requests that you receive. But I think that there are probably several instances where you could have a reason to grant a variance where not all four criteria are met. And I think that needs to be considered. For example, if a property owner wanted to grant an easement to another property owner, but it impacted adversely their own building envelope, but that the purpose of the easement was to allow that property owner that's receiving the easement to put their septic drain field farther from a river, a stream, or a lake, that would be for the greater good. And I think it should be considered. Another example might be if a property owner wanted to grant an easement that once again adversely affected their own building envelope, but for the property owner receiving the easement, it gave them a safer access to their own property. That would be a benevolent thing to do. I think that should be considered. Another example might be if a property owner had a large parcel and the contour of the land was such that there were multiple levels to it, and it would be helpful to them to have more than one stairway in the setbacks. That might be helpful to them and not adversely affect anybody else, and maybe that should be considered. I think there could be a lot of other examples too. I think particularly the fourth criteria here, as I read it, it's really addressing the taking of a property. And as I read it, if you can't show that it would be a taking of your property use, if you didn't get the variance, then you wouldn't be able to get the variance. So everything would be contingent upon that. And I think that's a very high standard. I think it would be very difficult to meet for a lot of people, to meet all four of those, including that last one, which would be a difficult one. In reality, I think if they did have a situation where it would be a taking of their property, they could probably prevail in a court judgment unless the township could show eminent domain, which would be even a higher standard and more difficult thing to show. So I think that requiring all four criteria be met would be an undesirable thing. I think you need to consider all these things, but I think that if you have a variance procedure that is so difficult to meet or almost impossible, then you really don't really have a provision for variances. You just have a provision in name only. So I think you really need to consider whether or not you need to have all four or all five criteria met. Excuse me, five, I guess it is. I think you need to allow the Zoning Board of Appeals to examine all of these and consider them all, but allow them to use their judgment and their training and do the job that we're paying them to do, making that judgment. So thank you for the opportunity to express my opinion.
Thank you, Janet. Lots of great examples. Anyone else? No one else?
Okay,
May
so, go ahead. Any questions?
I do have a question.
Sure.
I just want to, thank you, I appreciate that. So if I follow this correctly, it would be something that would be presented to the Planning Commission prior to going to the Zoning Board of Appeals based on this, per what she's asking. in terms of a variance, not subject to the criteria that you just spoke of.
Yeah, so these are when somebody would need a variance, say for a setback or something like that, and they go to the zoning board of appeals, these are the 5 items that the ZBA is gonna review. Similar to like when you do a site plan or a special use and you walk through those at the planning commission level.
Right.
These are the zoning board of appeals criteria, just like that.
Right, but to get to what Janet's point was, you would come before the plan commission first with the presentation of maybe some amendments.
Right,
Maybe.
if there was something that, right, exactly.
To your point.
Right.
Because I agree with what you're saying. If somebody wants to help somebody out to make it work in both parties and it comes out legally, then that would be done before us and then passed to the,
Yeah, it could be, or I mean.
for an amendment, I
Right.
guess.
Yeah, similar to this, if we find that there's multiple situations, either where the ZBA is granting or denying variances or something the planning commission needs to consider as options for different regulations from what we have in the zoning ordinance, there is the amendment process to go through. Something about this criteria is that the law requires the ZBA to have criteria that has to be met in order to grant a variance. So we are, while it may not have to be these exact words, we are required to have that criteria where all of them are met to grant the variance. Just because in the
Right.
past, it was more, oh, they're a good guy, or that looks good, and there wasn't any criteria, so people weren't treated the same. So this way, we can protect the township
Right.
by having the same criteria for everyone and treating everyone the same.
So if I understand, so this is good. I like this, but
Mm-hmm.
prior to what you're saying, Janet, it would need to come before us for discussion before it ever
Right.
went before the ZBA. Correct?
Well,
I mean-
not always.
I mean,
If you
somebody
wanna
wants
do
a
the
variance,
amendment, if somebody wants
wants a variance, you gotta come to us first.
Nope, that goes straight to the ZBA. If they want an amendment, that would come to the planning commission first.
Right, but the amendment might be the way to go
Right,
prior to going to the ZBA.
Right.
Because you can go to the ZBA and not meet this.
Right.
Follow what I'm saying? Your point is well taken.
Well, they have to follow the ordinance, the ZBA. And if this is your criteria, and you're requiring all these criteria to be met, then they don't have much option.
That is why you would come before us.
to
Correct?
change the ordinance.
So they go to the ZBA with their variance, they don't come here first.
But the amendment would be made here to have something to go to the ZBA with.
Which is what you're doing tonight, right?
This is for the ZBA, correct? But I'm just telling what I think is correct?
Right, so if you wanted to, so the options you could have, so say somebody wanted, something was about one of these easements or something like that. If they went through the ZBA process and were denied, there's always the option to apply for an amendment to the zoning ordinance. So that would be here in front of the planning commission as an opportunity if it's something that would need to be done for multiple property owners or a different way to develop it.
Why not deal with it right?
Well, I think where we're set here is okay, personally. But to your point, that's why I'm saying what I am saying is to go about this in what you're asking, there are ways to do that. We have to have criteria set.
Right, and I think that's important.
It's very important, but also note that there are other avenues to, just because this is etched in stone, that doesn't mean you can't come before us or appeal to it also for an amendment in certain case scenarios, correct?
Yep, there may be more than one way, I guess, to get to the end result, depending on what
Right.
it is. And so the variance criteria is here because a variance is a request to essentially break the law in the zoning ordinance. And so that's why we have the variance and that's why you have the criteria.
Yeah.
A lot of times, we're dealing with setbacks, non-conforming houses or something like that, where somebody wants to do something to that. And so we have this criteria to help make a decision on that.
No, I like what you're saying.
So the planning commission's role here is to make a recommendation to the township board. So just kind of go over that, whatever the decision is from the planning commission, it gets forwarded to the county. They have 30 days to do their review. And then it goes on to the township board. They're the policy setters for the township. So they have the end say in the amendments. So Once you get to a spot where you're comfortable with everything, you would be recommending approval to the township board for this amendment.
Sarah, I have a question. Based on the public comment, do you have any, or know of any, and I don't even know how to word this, but where there is accommodation for the greater good, for the protection of environment, that there would be, if it could meet a criteria of extenuating circumstances that had a higher value for the greater good
Yeah.
in terms of environment, that kind of thing. Because I did really appreciate those comments from the public, so.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, you'd go under the unique circumstances that apply to the property is kind of where that environmental component may come into. The issue is, and I'm not saying that, these are perfect, is that when you're talking about the greater good, it's kind of subjective and depending on who it is and what your priorities are and what you feel are important. And so we try to take away some of those components just because it's hard to be consistent in making decisions when you talk about the greater good. But I also understand that's only one of the, could be one criteria out of 5 or 6 for that. But I think that, you're talking about strict compliance is preventing the applicant from using their property. So for example, if you're talking about a septic system, an easement for a septic system, which the ZBA doesn't deal in easements, we don't deal in easements for your land use permit. It's all with the health department. If you need an easement for your septic and your neighboring property wants to give you an easement, that's between you and your neighbor. But say that we are dealing with the septic system, say it's on your own property and you need a variance so you can put your septic on the roadside instead of the lakeside for whatever reason. You can look at this and say, what's the unique circumstance of the property? Is it the topography or the shape of the property? You're going to look at the spirit of the ordinance and fair to adjacent properties for that, where other people have their septics, what that looks like. Self-created, we all, know about that one. And then minimum necessary. So is it just enough to get that septic in there and put the house closer? And then strict compliance prevents the applicant from using the property. So if strict compliance would say they can't put their septic, say, on the water side or something like that, then you'd be able to say, yes, that criteria is met. So.
All right, we done with deliberation? Any more questions? Do you want to go to a motion?
Yeah. So your motion's to recommend approval.
Do I have to ask for that? Somebody else?
Somebody needs to make a motion
Yeah.
that says that.
I would make the motion to recommend approval.
Anyone want a second?
I'll second.
And what was that thing you said? What do I say now?
All those in favor?
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. Next up, amendment to chapter 21, section 2102, amendment criteria.
So these, you've seen a couple of times. They were in front of you, I think, last year or 2 years ago. Currently, the zoning ordinance doesn't have any criteria for the planning commission to review when amending the zoning ordinance to base your decision on for either map rezonings or text rezonings. So this kind of gives you a list of items to look at and think about when you are amending the ordinance.
Okay. I don't think we had any more public comment. No? All right, close that out. Deliberation, anyone have anything? I can say I love the fact that we have something to use. I think it worked really well when we were able to use something similar in past.
I did read it. I think it's well stated and I approve.
Anything, Jason? No?
Yeah, so this motion would be the same to recommend approval to the township board.
Anyone want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the approval,
Recommend approval.
recommend approval of section 21.02 amendment criteria.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right, ongoing reports. Zoning administrators report.
I don't have it for you. I will get it for the next meeting. Usually Jackie puts it out for me and she's on vacation, so
Woo-hoo.
we'll forgive her and,
Yes.
hopefully you can forgive me. I'll give it to you next time.
Okay. PC representative to ZBA report.
No meeting last month, but we have an upcoming training session.
I sent an email out today, so, we're gonna reschedule it.
Okay, it's being rescheduled.
So no meeting last month, no meeting this month or next month.
Okay, TLT board representative on PC report.
Yeah, it was pretty quick and easy last month, even though I wasn't there. We approved a new contract for IT Right. We submitted a Michigan Fire Equipment Grant, and we were recognized at the National EMS Week.
Nice. Okay. Public comments not related to the public hearings. Anybody? None. Okay, any concerns?
I don't have a concern, but I'd just like to express my appreciation for the support of the township for going through what's that mean? The training.
You may just have to shut it off and turn it back on.
For the community planning training, the 6-week session. And it was a financial commitment on the part of the township, and I appreciate it. And I'm glad I was able to participate.
Great.
Yeah, and I
Thank you.
did send out notice, there's doing one in Traverse City in October. And so anybody that hasn't done that citizen planner program, could be a great local opportunity to do that as well.
Anyone else?
I have a question.
Sarah? Oh, yeah.
So do we have some special meetings coming up?
Yeah, so after adjournment on here, I've got your 2 dates, June 26th and June 28th at 6 PM. We're gonna be working on this draft zoning ordinance. I did have an email out there with the sections that we were gonna start tonight, so it kind of all just got pushed back a meeting, but I'll send that back out again to what sections to take a look at.
And is that a new PDF?
That's the same PDF that went out in October.
Okay. So like my comments will be on there. Maybe I was signed in or something.
Yeah, I think you were signed in.
Okay,
I'd have
I'll
to
try it
look,
that
I
way
can go
then.
back and look and see if you put comments on that, because I don't remember if you did or not,
Okay.
but I can check. Go to the cloud and find out.
Okay, cool, thanks. All right. If there's nothing else, we'll adjourn at 7:23. Oh, wait, with a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn this meeting.
A second?
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 7:23 adjourned. It was 7:24, sorry.